Hello, welcome to the session today. We'll just allow a moment for all the delegates to join and then we will begin. So welcome if you've already joined, and we'll just wait a moment for everybody else. Just waiting a minute or two more to allow everyone to join the session, and then we will begin. Okay. Hello, welcome to today's session. I'm Rachel Reed, Director of Insight at ETOA. I'm delighted to be joined today by Hannah Babineau from our partners at the Data Appeal Company. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Rachel. How are you?
I am great, thank you. Lovely to have you along for another webinar.
Very much happy to be back.
No, yes, very much looking forward to hear some new insights. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Hannah's presentation will be available afterwards, and we'll send that to you along with a link to the recording, and we'll also put it up on our Insight Hub, so that'll be available shortly after the session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A, and when Hannah's finished her presentation, we'll have some time to look at those. Just a reminder, as I say, it will be on the Insight Hub. If you haven't had a look on there, that's etoa.org/insight. You can find lots of things from Data Appeal on there. They have their own channel if you want to look for some more things from Hannah and her colleagues. But today, specifically, we are going to be looking at spending and visitor sentiment. So we all know it's quite challenging, or has been in the past, to get hold of accurate spend data. And luckily for us, that is changing now. And we've got companies like Data Appeal really harnessing that. And one interesting thing we can do is link that to visitor sentiment, which I think is a really interesting thing for us to be able to talk about. So we'll be handing over to Hannah on that in just a moment. So yes, I mean, just to say that the point of that really is to help manage visitor flow. As we know, this is a huge issue that comes up a lot now, is effective management of visitors and sending them to less crowded places and bringing them off season, and all of those things that we would like to do with our destinations. And so with that, I will hand over to Hannah to hear your insights.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where in the world you're located. Today, we'll be talking about really the combination between sentiment data and spending data, and how really leveraging and combining both of them can help derive insights to improve tourism destinations, especially when it comes to having sustainable and efficient kind of destination management. So I think the first trend we're really seeing kind of coming from that destination side is this shift, where DMOs and tourism boards are really trying to redefine what they consider success. So instead of looking at sheer volume and numbers or bed nights, the number of arrivals coming in, they're really shifting that focus towards which types of visitors leave the best impact on the economy, the community, and the environment and their destination. So really kind of the thing they're trying to find is understand which data can help them target these high value visitors who align with their local priorities. So what that is really that shift from quantity to quality. So at the same time, destinations are really trying to make this shift. We're also seeing a shift from the visitor side and the travelers, where they're really kind of going from the sightseeing state of mind to really this experiencing and this authentic type of travel. So we're seeing a lot of modern travelers, especially younger travelers. Their incomes are growing and they are kind of being able to travel more. So they're not out there trying to see kind of the top 5, landmarks when they're going to a destination. They're trying to immerse themselves in the local communities and in the local culture. That could be with cooking classes, walking tours, bike tours. Some are even going to stay kind of on local reservations, doing volunteer work, and really giving back to that local community while having the opportunity to visit. So the important thing that destinations really need to do is align that demand with this visitor interest. So I think the age-old question is, what comes first, the traveler demand or the destination's offer? And I really think it's not that easy to answer, kind of like the chicken and the egg. It's really a combination where the destinations need to understand what is being required from the visitors, and visitors also are doing kind of their research and what is that offer of the tourism destination and how they can kind of give back to the best of their abilities. So we're really seeing that as travelers are looking for these more kind of meaningful or these personal experiences, they are thankfully leaving these little kind of cookie crumbs, if you will, online on social media in their reviews for destinations to then kind of take back and analyze. And this is really where sentiment data comes in. So sentiment data, if you guys are unfamiliar, is really understanding the ratings, reviews, social posts, surveys. So what people are saying, how they feel, and kind of a reputation of a destination and the experience. This can be as a whole, but also for the individual operators, so local restaurants, hotels, attractions. And really by leveraging and taking advantage of these kind of cookie crumbs that are left from the sentiment data, destinations can really cater a personalized offer to exceed expectations, again, that align with the goals of the destination. So really, why does sentiment data matter? As I said, so it's really kind of that measurement and able to benchmark and compare over time or against competitors of a destination's performance through ratings, reviews, social posts, social media. I read something the other day that was like over 99% of people read at least one online review before making a purchase. So booking a hotel, going out to eat at a restaurant, maybe choosing which experience on maybe on TripAdvisor or Get Your Guide before making that purchase. And 99 or 91% of individuals trust these online reviews as much as they would a personal recommendation. So with sentiment data, you're also able to detect interesting insights as well. So maybe what people not only think about the destination overall, but maybe some of these touch points for them, what they think about elements like safety or the price, the cleanliness, accessibility, or inclusivity of a destination. So kind of to bring this data to life, I kind of used the city of Milan as an example, as we're kind of nearing Christmas time here. Milan is doing a lot of work kind of for the Christmas tourism and the Christmas markets for a major city. So here you can see essentially this is kind of greater city of Milan. And each of these tiles represents a different sentiment score. The darker the green is where sentiment is a lot higher. And then of course in red is where sentiment is a little bit lower and there are areas of improvement. Here you can see the overall sentiment score is just shy of 85 out of 100, and it has improved last year during that same time period. So definitely a city that is working a lot on improving the visitor experience. The trend is showing basically week to week how that sentiment changes. You can see it is quite consistent. We tend to see some of these larger urban cities are a lot more consistent in their sentiment than some seasonal ones. But you can see there was a little bit of a dip around the holidays last year, so similar time frame here. Things got a little bit higher and then a smaller dip kind of as we approach the summer season. With the sentiment insights, you can of course dig deeper. So the volume of these kind of digital traces, so these reviews and these social posts. So this, of course, has a high correlation with the arrivals coming in. You can also dig deeper to see what is it that people like or dislike. You can see, look, using Milan again as an example, things like the staff is very, very high. People really like the rooms itself for the hospitality industry. However, there are some complaints and areas of improvement for things like the price and the safety. You can also see how each industry is performing over time, looking at the different sentiment and distribution of volume between reviews. Here I just had a quick screenshot of the most relevant points of interest for both the retail industry and the attraction industry. So you can dig further to see what it is. Are people going to more museums, maybe outdoor activities, maybe going out to eat, etc. while they're there. So not only can you measure the destination's offer and local operators, but you can also do the same thing through the eyes of your visitors. So these essentially are ranked in order of the distribution. So the number of contents coming from each of these source markets. Of course, the domestic one in this case does make up the largest volume. And then the sentiment, I'll say, really kind of falls in the middle. They're then ranked down below. So you can see the top two markets in the city are France and Germany, and followed by the ones here. You can also see how that sentiment might change based on the source market. In this case, you can see the France and German sentiment is a little bit lower than that national average that we saw before. But there are some markets that do have a much more positive experience, like the UK and Brazil and the US market. Same thing, you can also see who these visitors are, not only where they're coming from, but are they coming as couples, families, business travelers, etc. So kind of putting this to action. So sentiment is great, but kind of what can you really make of it? And how can you leverage that to have more sustainable tourism? So I have an example here of looking at the hospitality industry using both the French versus the German markets. If, for example, a destination wanted to focus on one market that has the best impact for their local economy, community, and environment, since both markets have similar, I'll say, carbon emissions coming into the city. You can see in this case, the sentiment for the French market is a little bit higher than the German one. And here you can see where that sentiment is higher or lower, depending where in the city. You can see the French market here has a much higher sentiment than the German one, kind of in that southwest corner. On the flip side, as you get into the kind of the northeast, the Germans tend to have a little bit better experience, and that's where they go further. Digging in, you can also see which hotels and accommodation properties are preferred by each market and what it is that their experience is like. You can see in this case, the French market, again, quite positive. They really appreciate the hotel staff, the atmosphere, the food, but there are some complaints about the costs and the internet. On the flip side, the German market here, again, really appreciate the staff, also the structure. And while they had an overall sentiment a little bit less, there were no major areas of complaints. So kind of what does this mean and how can this relate to spending data? So while we see that the sentiment data helps understand these emotions or the expectations of different travelers, it really helps leveraging spending to put that into action. So destinations can really understand which experiences or local properties resonate the most with different visitors and tailor their offer to kind of really maximize the impact of the economy and then also the satisfaction. So really shifting gears from sentiment to spending. Spending data has been invaluable to identify high-value visitors and their preferred activities, of course, filtered by where they're coming from. So if people prefer to go out to eat, maybe put more money into retail shopping, maybe they prefer short-term rentals, therefore they're maybe going grocery shopping more, really kind of breaking down these elements. And then, of course, where in the city that they're making these purchases. You can also highlight different things like seasonality, geographical trends, and then have a breakdown between business travel and kind of leisure personal. So again, using that same example of the French versus German market, here you can see what their spending looks like. In this case, you can see the French market, their sentiment was a little bit higher, but their spending is much, much higher in the city of Milan, just over double. So overall spending, how many cards were in the area? So you can see a lot more French cards were being used. Average spending per card, pretty similar. And then here an average transaction value, also again, pretty similar. You can see most of the trends are nearly identical, except we do have a little bit of a difference in shift, where the French spend more money on groceries and the Germans a little bit more on transportation. These are typical links that when grocery shopping is higher spending, they tend to go into more short-term rental accommodations than like a traditional hotel or B&B. And then transportation means they're probably using the local metros or taxis a little bit more versus perhaps walking in around the city. So kind of linking spending and sentiment, these are both two elements that really help with sustainable growth. So kind of, I mentioned before, focusing on the right visitors. What does the right visitor really mean to a destination? And this will vary from area to area, but it's really the visitors who put more back into the economy. It's typically those who tend to stay longer. So with looking at flight data, who are the ones that have longer and more nights in a destination, the ones that spend more, the ones that have a higher experience and a higher sentiment, and that kind of support the activities that the destination is looking to promote. So kind of putting all these elements together, destinations can improve their reputation, really work with less crowding or dispersion of visitors, kind of getting them out of these hotspots and really balancing their seasonality. So kind of putting kind of sustainability into this spending and sentiment mix. I know it's a lot of S's. I have two graphs here. The first one looks at the popularity. So this is a kind of a proxy for footfall and foot traffic, how busy an area is. So again, using Milan as our example, if Milan is looking to get people kind of away from the city center to avoid kind of these overcrowdings of some of these hotspots, what is an area for them that they could kind of leverage? And we've pinpointed kind of the best area would be, again, in that kind of southwest area. And here, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with the city, but this is between kind of Assaggio, Wagner, Bandinere in this area here. Looking at also the tourism pressure, it's also a good area to kind of leverage because not only is the foot traffic minimal, but also the pressure is as well. So the pressure index looks at the population of a destination and the available accommodations, short-term rentals, and occupancy. The higher the index in this case, the better the pressure is. So the less pressure is off the destination. So you can see, again, and also a very good area to kind of essentially move people away from kind of the center here and move them a little bit. It's about 45 minutes southwest. Adding on sentiment and spending, you can also see this is a good area. People are definitely spending a lot, certainly not as much as the city center, but there also are a high offer of shops, hotels, restaurants, things to do. And this is able to track progress over time. Are people spending more in this area? Similar with sentiment. Again, you can see the sentiment in this area is very high. So you can see it's already an area that people appreciate, and you can track over time if you're kind of dispersing people from the city center, if some of these new areas are progressing and you are being successful in these initiatives. So kind of summing it up, it's really about balancing the visitor value with the community needs. So kind of limiting visitors in these sensitive or kind of overcrowded areas. I'm not a big fan of the word over-tourism myself. For me, it's really kind of the mismanagement of visitors because it's one of those things you don't know what you don't know. So perhaps visitors don't know what's available in some of these areas that are kind of less promoted. And I think destinations also have the job to kind of promote off-season and kind of shoulder season travel instead of having everyone come maybe in the summertime. How can you leverage the spring or the fall or some of the months outside of the peak season? And I think this only can be done by engaging local communities within the tourism destinations. So your local operators, your hotels, your restaurants, your attractions, are they wanting to be a part of this? Are they wanting more travelers to come in? And it's really about having an open conversation with the people who work there. So kind of summing it all up, it's really about focusing on quality over quantity and really using sentiment and spending data to kind of guide and then measure the progress of these decisions. And really trying to balance that tourism pressure with the popularity and the infrastructure available in some of these areas. Hopefully that kind of resonated with everyone. Rachel and I are here for some questions. Love to hear your feedback. And if any of the destinations who are listening in have kind of made some of these steps, love to hear, what's working or what's not working for you. And I think we can only learn from kind of talking with each other and having the opportunity in webinars like this. And ETOA is an amazing organization, really bringing the destinations in one place to share their success stories or hear ways that they are able to kind of improve over time.
Thank you, Hannah. Really, really interesting to see the level of detail that we can get, by area, and very, very quite detailed areas as well, isn't it? I think it's really exciting to see. As Hannah mentioned, do please type any questions that you have for Hannah into the Q&A, and we have time now to cover some of those. One thing I was wondering, Hannah, is do happier visitors spend more? Because obviously, I mean, it must depend what they want, but I suppose I'm thinking in my mind of things like if people buy an upgraded experience or a better room or something like that. Can you see any link with that at all?
We have, yeah. So I'll say pretty early stages right now, kind of doing the research on spending and sentiment data. But from what we're finding, yes, definitely between 20 and 30% are spending more. We're seeing a lot of great kind of trends in especially the hospitality industry when it comes to like ancillaries. So are people maybe getting room service, booking experiences through the hotel or leveraging the concierge? That tends to be an area where it's easier also to track. just because I think, and that's tends to be one of the first physical touch points in the tourism destination. Of course, touch points and kind of the experience start way before a traveler's in the destination, kind of on social media. But in terms of when they get there, when they check in, if that experience is a positive one and they know what they can expect, or maybe they're offered like discounts as well through the hotel, I think a little goes a long way. And people are also a lot more willing to share their experiences that way as well.
Yes, yes, that is interesting, isn't it? I have a question that came through from the questions that people can submit
Yeah.
ahead of time, and it was really from somebody wondering about trying to spread the quality, as it were. Can we use this data to help distribute people? Because obviously, that is something that is uh, very much what people would like to do. Is that possible?
Definitely, definitely. We've seen some amazing use cases with that. One of our customers is in Seville in Spain. Actually, we were talking about that before the call. So essentially, they're using the data to get people out of these hotspots by promoting some of the areas that might be under promoted. So understanding what's available, maybe outside of the city centers, and which of those points of interest do have high sentiment scores based on who essentially likes them the most. So if you are a destination and you're trying to promote, you kind of promote the Anglo-Saxon market, so people coming in from the UK, Australia, Canada, the US, where do those people like to go? And what are the kind of the themes or the elements? Do they prefer cooking classes, going on hiking, biking of the city, and really leveraging kind of what's out in the suburbs? And it could be also nearby towns as well. So maybe a comparable destination, not a competitor, but kind of a comparable one. So maybe a smaller town that's a little bit outside, but easy to reach by bike or by bus or by train.
And I mean, one thing that I think would be interesting as well is obviously I saw the granular detail you can have by origin market, as in this is what the French thought, this is what the Germans thought, etc. Um, whether you could sort of use that to go, it's more likely that French visitors would be willing to move a little bit further out here. It's maybe more likely that Italians would not be willing to take the bus or something like that. I mean, can you sort of get to that level? Because I think that would be something that destinations could really tap into in terms of where to direct their energies in that.
Definitely. I think it's really about kind of piecing the parts of the puzzle together. So, for example, let's use the French market in Milan. If we know maybe there's a specific cuisine type that they like to eat, maybe they're not going to pizzerias, they prefer maybe Chinese food. What are kind of that available places to kind of get them to have kind of these newer places on their radar instead of the traditional ones in a city center? Same thing goes for attractions, hotels, maybe retail shops, boutique stores. If they are, again, I'll say sensitive to those elements. So if you do know a certain maybe couples from France or families from the UK really like and are sensitive to certain things, for example, maybe business travelers, Wi-Fi connectivity is important, maybe being near a co-working cafe or a metro to the airport. Kind of by piecing those all together, you can find them kind of mini itineraries within some of these new areas.
Yes, that's it. That's very kind of an interesting way to look at that. And I also was wondering with regards to the spend, because I mean you've got sort of two ways of spending a lot of money. One is by buying expensive things, and one is
Exactly.
staying a long time. And I wondered whether you can get to spend per day, because that also gives you an idea of the type of visitor that you've got. And whether, in fact, even, sorry to extend, Hannah, as I'm thinking about this, whether that even extends to sentiment. Do people who stay a long time, do they have a higher sentiment? So those two things, can you get to that with the data?
So right now it's, I'd say weekly is kind of the most minimal granularity. The really interesting thing is if there are events, that's a really interesting additional data set to add on. So if there was a conference or a concert, a sporting event happening during those days, kind of linking those together and really pinpointing, was the spending a result of maybe the Taylor Swift concert or, the football match that was there that weekend. So I think events are a nice way to make some educated assumptions. Obviously with GDPR, we can't get to the most granular level, just for like privacy reasons. So that's typically why weekly is the most granular. But of course, you can make some kind of educated assumptions. Within the spending data, we do have both the overall spending per week, but then also the transactional value. So I definitely think that's a nice KPI to really answer your question. Because again, is it maybe someone is there, again, using Milan as our example, are they buying maybe a Gucci purse while they're there, or are they just going out to cafes and buying a lot of water bottles, coffees, sandwiches? So really trying to find that balance between, again, high transaction and frequent transactions.
Do you know, actually, Hannah, you've just raised something very pertinent there with the event thing, because I know Data Appeal has done quite a lot of work on event tourism, and that is a very important marketing tool for destinations, is, you know, around specific events. But I think there's also an interesting take on sentiment. If people didn't know that was on. So obviously you've got people who are coming for the Taylor Swift, and I loved it, and the concert was fantastic, everything I hoped for. And while I was in Milan, I did blah, blah, blah. Do you have other people who go, I did not realise the football was on and it was awful? I'm just curious to know whether you could see that as well.
Definitely, yeah. So we can see good, bad, ugly, otherwise, through sentiment data. And I think that's really where a destination needs to kind of be proactive and as, you know, transparent as possible in promoting to say, hey, these concerts or sporting event, and it could also be a conference. I know we're all in the tourism industry here, so events like WTM or ITB, I mean, certainly you'll see cities a lot more congested during those weeks than, other parts of the year. So I think that's really kind of the job of a destination, is to stay proactive and transparent as possible. But I think the really cool thing with sentiment data is because you can get it from so many angles, whether it's a review or a social post, you can really understand what people are saying in real time. And I think over the last 5-6 years, we've really been able to kind of tap into this real-time or near real-time data where you can make adjustments and improvements. I think that's something we saw during the Tour de France in Florence this summer, where I'm based. I think the city was very proactive in letting tourists know, hey, this is happening. A huge cycling race will be happening over these days in the city. Prepare ahead. Maybe these are the bus stops or the tranvia, so it's kind of like our little tramway that you should not take if you're trying to avoid kind of the madness of the cycling. And maybe here's are some recommended itineraries that you can do instead, that are a little bit away from where things are happening.
Oh, yes, I see. Do please ask any questions that you would like to Hannah. We don't have any open ones at the moment, Hannah. So just thinking of coming near the end of our time. I suppose, my question for you, Hannah, is, with your Data Appeal hat on, is what do you think we might be able to do next? What are you looking at next in terms of extending this type of analysis?
Definitely. So I think kind of the question that you asked first, really trying to find that link between, does, a better sentiment lead to higher spending? Or also kind of on the flip side, someone who does spend a lot, are they tend to also recommend it to their friends and family to travel as well? So really trying to get some hard numbers to piece that together. And I think it will look different for all destinations. Certainly there are some, I think, cities and regions that are a lot more tourism centric. Others that might be more business, that might be more domestic. So of course we see a big trend is domestic travelers tend to spend less. Obviously it's their country of origin. They're traveling from a shorter period. They tend to stay for a shorter bit of time. They're not usually the ones that need to buy all the souvenirs because they live there. So really trying to take some more actionability from this spending. So that's really where we're heading now. And of course, I'll say, Data Appeal, we're long users of AI. So how can we use AI to really kind of pull these actionable insights and then kind of take these information and put that into action? So based on this, you should do ABC, and we expect these results. That's kind of where we're hoping to go.
So maybe that'll be our next webinar.
Exactly.
And in fact, actually, your mention of AI there, Hannah, has prompted a question from Murat, who's listening today. Do you at the moment have any data regarding all-inclusive hotel concepts. I apologize, I misread all-inclusive as AI. So it's not on AI, it's about all-inclusive hotels. Do you have any data on the impact of all-inclusive hotels on visitor, either behavior or happiness? Is that something you can get to?
Definitely, definitely. So within kind of our dashboard environment for destinations, we can drill down to a specific point of interest. So that could be a hotel or a resort in that case, and understand exactly. So the sentiment, what is sentiment at these places? And for each of these different topics or elements. So are people spending more on food? Are they spending more maybe in the gift shop if there's a spa or a golf course kind of linked into that? And then, of course, the sentiment, what do they like? What do they dislike? And who they are kind of in a nutshell. So are they your families? Are they your couples? Are they your business travelers who are spending more and have a higher experience? So definitely, I'll say because we kind of take a bottom up approach, we can drill down to that individual property level in this case.
Fantastic. I think that was the last of the questions from the audience. So we'll wrap up in a moment. But just to say, I think into next year, it would be really interesting to hear what you're doing with AI and how you're harnessing that, because I think as tourism businesses, we often think of it on the front end and what it is for the customers. But of course, one of the really interesting applications is in collecting and cleaning data for us to use for the business decisions.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll say I'm lucky that I'm not on that team. I know our team is very, very good. This is our 10-year anniversary as a company, so we've put a lot of work into the quality of the data, especially like limiting fake reviews or kind of the robot reviews and like duplicates, or businesses that have closed that still might have like a Facebook page still active. So we put a lot of work, I'll say, behind the scenes, and AI only helps us refine that. So it's gone from a bit more manual to a lot more automatic. But yeah, I'll say for us that's the most important thing is having data that's not only actionable, but that's quality data.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think with that, Hannah, we will close for the day. So, Hannah Babineau, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
again
you.
today. And we look forward to seeing everybody again on another of our sessions. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.